Are you living with the belief in the American dream that as long as you work hard, you will always have a home to return to? In Michigan, 2025, that once simple truth is quietly falling apart. Once a symbol of stability for the American working class, the Great Lakes state is now buckling under an uncontrollable homelessness crisis. Tents have sprung up all over the parks. The stench of waste pervades the sidewalks, and there are even no-go zones where the police dare not tread. The bustling urban centre has faded into the past, giving way to abandoned buildings, rusting industrial zones, and crumbling walls that temporarily shelter lives with nowhere else to cling to. In today's video, let's step through the thick, icy snow to uncover the hidden dark side of Michigan, where the American dream is quietly turning into a nightmare, and the most vulnerable are always the first to be buried. Michigan used to be a land of hope, where people came to start anew, to build their dreams from scratch. But now, that very place is where tens of thousands of people are losing everything, not just their homes, but also their faith in America. According to official statistics in 2025, there are more than 33,226 people living in homelessness in Michigan. But that number is just the tip of the iceberg. It does not include those who are sleeping in cars, staying with friends, or huddling on the fringes of parks, because they do not qualify to be counted as homeless. Most official statistics only account for those who sleep outdoors, in tents, or stay at recognized facilities. Even more heartbreaking, many of them still work full-time every day. Some of them have served in the military. Some people once worked on the assembly line at General Motors. A primary school teacher who once dedicated herself to the younger generation. They are still working, but they can't afford a roof over their heads. So what is the meaning of the American dream when those who once shouldered America now have to lay their heads on the sidewalks? No need to look far. In Sweden, the government ensures basic housing for all citizens, regardless of their circumstances. In Japan, homeless support centres are managed as part of the welfare policy. No one has to endure the biting cold on the streets. Even in Canada, cities like Toronto or Vancouver have a warming centre system open throughout the winter, ready to welcome anyone without limitations on numbers or complicated administrative procedures. In Michigan, people call the state hotline and often receive a waiting list. The houses that once gave rise to the middle class now serve as the last wall preventing a family from falling to the bottom of society. Once that wall collapses, there is no one to catch them. The collapse in Michigan did not come with a bang. It came slowly, smouldering, like rust corroding the sturdiest beams of America. And if this could happen in Michigan, the industrial heart of the country, then where else is safe? And if this is happening in Michigan, the industrial heart, the pride of America, what do we have left to believe that other places won't follow suit? What do you think? Is the American dream still a place for those who have lived their whole lives for it? Or has it now become just a dream for others? Is there anything more heartbreaking than your instinct to find shelter leading you right into the eye of the storm? In birds, winter is a signal to leave, to fly south, where there is sunlight, where branches are warm enough to perch on overnight. In Michigan, there are also human birds who fly back with a suitcase and a dream that they will find spring here. But they do not know that spring has long since departed. All that remains is a bone-chilling winter, enough to freeze even the most fragile hopes. Angelina is one of them. She is a single mother who came to Detroit to find a new beginning. However, that new beginning did not provide her with a fulfilling life. Instead, it brought her to a makeshift existence in an old motel on 8 Mile Road. She always lived in a state of uncertainty, worrying about what tomorrow would bring or where she would sleep. She had called a series of shelters, but each one repeated the same answer: full, Try again next week.
For the last 6 months, I felt so helpless.
That feeling is not unique to Angelina. During the recent snowstorm, a homeless mother and her 2 young children could not survive the harsh cold of Michigan. A short news line, but enough to stir waves not only among the homeless like Angelina, but also among those who still have a roof over their heads. This is not news. That is a sentence from the winter of the Promised Land. A warning that this Promised Land can take everything away. Your home, your hope, and the last warmth still left in your heart. Although the mayor of Detroit has committed to ensuring that such an incident will not happen again. But just the following week, people still found families curled up in thin blankets under the -10 degrees Celsius cold. The makeshift tents lined up along the road, like fragile candles trying to hold on amidst the snowstorm. The paradox is, Michigan has shelters, there is a budget, there is even a support system. But not everyone knows the way there. Not everyone has the necessary documents, the right qualifications, and sometimes no one has the strength left to seek help. When hope has been frozen since the first winter they slept on the street. This state used to be a place where people came to start over, to build their dreams from scratch. But now, that very place is where thousands of people are losing everything. Not just their homes, but also their faith in America. So what do you think? If there is a spring that never comes, will we, those who once lived our youth in a stable America, still have the courage to face the winter that is gradually approaching our own lives? There was a time when just mentioning Detroit would immediately bring to mind the echoing sounds of factory machines, the brightly lit car assembly lines working through the night, and the streets bustling with workers heading to their jobs with pride. This was once the most vibrant symbol of the American dream. A place where an ordinary person, with just 2 hands and a bit of hope, could support an entire family with an assembly line wage. But today, if you return to Detroit, the first thing you see is no longer the factories, but rather the concrete walls covered in moss. The window is broken, weeds grow in the middle of the road, and the quietest are the patched tents behind the abandoned industrial zones, where people once manufactured cars that brought America to the world. Detroit was once the automobile capital of the world. Now, it resembles the graveyard of the very dream it once represented. From 2000 to early 2025, the city lost more than 1/3 of its population. More than 12,000 houses have been abandoned, along with inactive industrial zones, transforming the landscape of this city into a post-apocalyptic scene. It's not just a matter of bricks and mortar, it's a story about people losing their jobs, losing their homes, and then losing their identities. When the automotive industry shrinks, the jobs that were once the backbone of the middle class also disappear. An economic shock, and thousands of families pushed out onto the streets. The workers who once assembled cars now pitch tents behind the factory. Those who once had pensions now live on food stamps. And that's when the homelessness crisis began to take shape. No longer a scattered phenomenon, it has become a map of devastation spreading throughout the city. Areas like Brush Park and Brightmoor are now described as almost completely abandoned. Rows of empty houses, broken windows, overgrown grass, and only a few survivors scattered among the desolation. Detroit once was the cradle of the American middle class, a place where you could live decently without a degree. But now, this very place reveals a bitter reality. Just one misstep can pull an entire family into the abyss. And when those who once bore the weight of America have to pitch tents to survive, it's not just a warning. It has gradually become a reality. So even Detroit, once seen as a model of revival, has now become a map of collapse. Perhaps what is truly rotting is not just the brick walls, but the very concept of the future that we once believed in. What could be more unusual than a state once known for its livability, now forcing those who once had homes to beg for a place to stay overnight? In less than a decade, home prices in many cities like Ann Arbor, Detroit, and Traverse City have increased by more than 225% since 1995, while average incomes have stagnated. Or worse, people have lost their jobs. The rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Lansing has now reached nearly $1,400 a month, a figure that may be low compared to major cities like Los Angeles or New York. But in this state, it is the entire pension money that residents here receive. Even the police now dare not intervene too deeply, simply because they are powerless against the tsunami called soaring housing prices. Homeless people do not commit crimes. They just do not have enough money to survive. And when the legal system is no longer flexible enough to protect the vulnerable, the question arises, what are we really protecting? Once, home ownership was a testament to stability. Now, keeping a roof over one's head has become a privilege. And the frightening thing is, no one dares to be sure how long they will keep it. Not because the people have changed, but because the system is shifting in a direction that only retains those who can pay the price. So, if a state that was once a model for settling down and starting a life has now become a land that pushes away its own residents, what has truly collapsed? The bricks in the house, or the values that once made America? Organizations like the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness, or Affordable Housing Now, are still crying out for help every day. But the budget is increasingly depleted, while the waiting list for affordable housing is endless. And if you are planning to move to Michigan for the low cost of living, be sure to thoroughly check the real estate market in areas like Ann Arbor, Grand Rapids, or Traverse City. Rental prices, property taxes, and the shortage of housing supply are making the dream of living cheaply, yet well, disappear faster than ever. How much have you lost to keep a roof over your head? Please share your story in the comments, because maybe someone needs to hear what you've overcome to know that they are not alone. There are dreams that do not collapse immediately. They fade away little by little, quietly and gradually. And for Michigan, that dream takes the form of a production line that has come to a halt, a factory with locked doors, an industrial area now only echoing with the sound of wind whistling through shattered windows. Once the heart of the American automotive industry, Detroit, Flint, Pontiac were not just names on the map. They were once symbols. It was a place where a man could graduate from high school, walk straight into a General Motors factory, and from there build an entire life. A roof over his head, a family, a vacation every year at Lake Michigan, and above all, an unwavering belief that as long as you work hard, the future will get better. But then everything changed. Automation, globalization, and the relocation of factories abroad have caused hundreds of thousands of jobs to disappear in just a few years. A fall without warning. No job loss guidance class. No second semester of life. Just one day, the factory doors closed, and the American dream closed with them. From the year 2000 until early June 2025, Michigan has lost more than 218,000 jobs in the manufacturing sector. Those who were once economic pillars now stand in line at charity kitchens. Hands once accustomed to machines and bolts now hold food vouchers. Unemployment is not just a number. It is losing the reason to wake up every morning. And so, the American labor dream, once the foundation upon which the entire nation was built, is now cracking right where it once shone the brightest. If work was once the path to dignity and stability, now the loss of jobs has taken away the social respect for the quietest people. In those old industrial zones, where millions of cars were once produced, tents, makeshift kitchens, and eyes that no longer dare to dream have now sprung up. No one wants to admit it, but homelessness in Michigan today is not just an issue for a marginalized group. It is a reflection of a system that has failed those who dedicated their lives. So when those who once built this country now have to live in the shadow of the old factory, how much time do we, the more fortunate ones, have left before it's our turn? If homelessness used to be the image of frail, lazy old people or forgotten veterans, today a completely different face is emerging. Young, healthy individuals who once had dreams, degrees, and jobs. In Michigan, the shelters now not only house the elderly, but also young people who have just graduated from college, young mothers with newborns, and newlywed couples who had rented small apartments just a few months ago. They are not failures or criminals. They are just victims of a system that no longer has room for ordinary people. A report from the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness at the end of 2024 indicated that the number of homeless individuals under 35 in the state had increased by 10% in just 12 months. Even more alarming is the number of homeless children, which remains at a concerning level, with most living in cars, temporarily staying with relatives, or constantly moving from one temporary home to another. This is no longer the story of an individual. It is the story of a generation. A generation that was taught that if they studied hard and worked diligently, they would have a stable life. But Michigan is no longer the land of promise. Nowadays, even a full-time job is not enough to pay the rent. When rent in Lansing, Ann Arbor, or Grand Rapids continues to rise steadily while wages remain stagnant, the consequence is a generation losing its youth, freedom, and even dreams. They don't dare to get married, don't dare to have children, and most importantly, no longer dare to dream of a bright future. The American dream, once built on the backs of young people willing to work, is now burying them in a fear of failure that they did not create. If there is one thing that makes people feel more numb than the cold of a Michigan winter, it is the feeling of no longer belonging anywhere, not even in their own homeland. The policy to support the homeless was originally created to protect those who find themselves at the end of their rope. But in reality, in Michigan, that system has become as tangled as a broken electrical cord. The temporary shelters are continuously overcrowded. The hotline goes unanswered. The support request forms are likened to an obstacle course, where each step adds another layer of confusion, a new procedure, a question that makes one feel like a beggar rather than a citizen in need of help. The local authorities are not entirely heartless, but they are running out of steam. The number of people needing support is increasing too quickly, while the budget is not keeping up. Every time the city council meets, they argue about where to cut back, instead of asking how to ensure everyone has a safe place to sleep each night. And in the meantime, non-profit organizations have become the last lifeline, but they too are being overwhelmed by the flood of younger, poorer, and more desperate homeless individuals. The heartbreaking thing is, in a country that once led the world in opportunities, asking for a place to sleep overnight has become a luxury, not because of a lack of kindness, but because the entire system is cracking. Each patch is only enough to hold on temporarily, not to heal. And so, those who once paid taxes, worked regularly, and were an indispensable part of the social machinery, now have to bow their heads and apply for temporary residency, as if their lives had lost value just because they lost a roof over their heads. We used to take pride in the saying, "In America, everyone has the opportunity to start over." We used to take pride in the saying, "In America, everyone has the opportunity to start over." But perhaps it's time to ask ourselves, does that opportunity still exist when, in order to start over, one needs a place to begin? But perhaps it's time to ask, does that opportunity still exist when, in order to start over, one must have a place to begin? Support centers like the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness or Affordable Housing Now are still struggling every day. They lack neither will nor plans, but only budget and trust from the very system they are serving. Meanwhile, the waiting list for affordable housing in Michigan has exceeded the limit. In some places, people have to wait up to 3 years for their turn. If you are thinking about moving to Michigan because you believe it is still affordable, stop. Check the real estate market in Kalamazoo, Traverse City, or even in the suburbs of Detroit. Because the dream of simple living low cost is gradually disappearing, faster than you think. Michigan used to be a place where the government promised to rebuild, where speeches resonated with the commitment that no one would be left behind. Michigan used to be a place where the government promised to rebuild, where speeches rang out with the commitment that no one would be left behind. But what is happening out there is the sight of hundreds being left behind in the bone-chilling cold, homeless, directionless, and most importantly, unheard. But what is happening out there is the scene of hundreds of people left in the bone-chilling cold, homeless, directionless, and most importantly, unheard. There have been dozens of redevelopment projects in downtown Detroit, campaigns to revive the manufacturing sector. The Michigan Rising plans are plastered everywhere, but the residents see new buildings rising, while the number of homeless people increases right beneath the foundations of those structures. A long-time Flint resident bitterly remarked, "The sustainable development signs hanging on the walls don't help me pay my rent. It also doesn't help my niece avoid sleeping under a bridge. Because amidst the lines of budgets, charts, and pilot plans, real people and real issues are gradually being forgotten. Because amidst the lines of budgets, charts, and pilot plans, real people and real issues are gradually being forgotten. They draw new economic maps, but forget to draw paths for the poor to walk on. Even the police, those who are supposed to be the last line of defense in maintaining order, now avoid the homeless camps, as they themselves feel powerless." A retired officer in Lansing once said at a community sharing session, "We have done what we can, but this crisis cannot simply be solved by cleaning up. Homelessness cannot be cleaned up by laws, cannot be covered up by yellow barriers, because it's not a matter of order, but of the collapse of a system that once promised to protect the people when they needed it most." Michigan did not collapse overnight. It collapsed gradually, each tent set up by the roadside, each house foreclosed by the bank, each dream denied when people knocked on doors asking for a chance. And now, when those who once paid taxes, who once believed in the Michigan-style American dream, now have to live in cars, sleep under bridges, and eat from food banks, the biggest question left is not whether Michigan can recover, but rather, what else can we believe in after losing everything? When mentioning Michigan, people used to envision a place to start anew, where an ordinary person could buy a house, raise a family, and dream of the future. But today, in that very same land, tens of thousands of people are fighting for each bed in shelters, huddling in cars during winter, or pitching tents next to the very factories where they once worked their entire lives. Worse, this crisis is no longer just a story of the elderly or the unemployed. It is getting younger, spreading. It's deeply ingrained in every community. But strangely, when it is not noisy, when the homeless are pushed out of the city centre, we start to get used to their disappearance. Not seen anymore. Does that mean they no longer exist? What do you think is really causing America to fracture? Housing prices, policies, or the prolonged indifference? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel and stay updated with our latest videos. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. This video is created to analyze and reflect a real slice of life in Los Angeles, with the aim of sparking reflection and positive dialogue within the community. All information, images, and data are illustrative, cited from public and reliable sources. We do not hold any individual or organization responsible, nor do we draw absolute conclusions. Viewers are encouraged to approach the content with an open mind and continue exploring from various perspectives.